Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 1.
There was a McDonald's in Maine that the night shift workers swore was cursed. Not in a casual, joking way either. There were real stories, whispered between employees who worked the graveyard hours, that something deeply wrong lingered in the fluorescent-lit dining room after midnight. It started with the cameras. The security system had motion sensors, so whenever someone moved inside after hours, a little red indicator would flash in the back office. Managers began noticing that the sensors were picking up movement in the lobby long after the doors were locked, long after the last customer had left. At first, they thought it was a glitch, until one manager pulled up the live feed and saw a shadow sitting at one of the booths. He said it looked like a man, hunched forward with his elbows on the table, except he had no features. Just a dark blur, like the cameras couldn't focus on him. When he walked out to check, the booth was empty. Other employees reported stranger things. The fryers would click on by themselves, oil bubbling as if an order had just been dropped. Headsets in the drive-thru would crackle to life with faint voices, but when they checked the monitor, the lane was empty. One worker swore she heard a child giggling in the play place long after it had been torn down. She quit the next day and refused to explain why. The scariest story, though, happened to a worker named Brandon. It was a slow Tuesday, just after 3 a.m., when he was alone in the lobby, wiping down tables. He said he heard the front doors hiss open, even though they were locked. When he turned, a man had walked inside. Tall, gaunt, pale as paper, wearing an old McDonald's uniform that looked decades out of date. Brandon froze, thinking maybe it was some weird prank. The man walked past him without saying a word and sat in the same booth that always triggered the cameras. Brandon said the man didn't blink, didn't move, just sat there staring straight ahead. Trying not to panic, Brandon ducked into the back to grab his manager, but when they returned, the booth was empty. On the table, though, was a Happy Meal box. It looked brand new, but when the manager opened it, inside was a tiny yellowed receipt. Printed on it was the date, March 2nd, 1987. That was the year a homeless man was found dead behind that same McDonald's, frozen during a brutal winter storm. Some workers believe that man is the one who comes back, replaying his last attempt to get warm inside. The story spread enough that corporate tried to shut it down, saying it was just local rumor. But ex-employees have posted online about their own experiences at that location, and a few even uploaded shaky cell phone videos of chairs dragging by themselves or the fryer baskets plunging into the oil with no one touching them. The McDonald's is still open, still serving customers like nothing's wrong, but the night shift crew refuses to eat there. They say sometimes when you close up late, you'll find fresh ketchup packets ripped open and smeared on the table in that booth, shaped like a pair of hands pressed flat against the surface. And no matter how many times they wipe it down, it always comes back. Do you want me to make the next horror story about another fast food chain, or should I stick with McDonald's for your audience?
Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 2.
There's a story from 2018 that McDonald's workers in Maine still whisper about, one that never made the news the way it should have. It was around 2 a.m. when the overnight shift was running, just 2 employees working the drive-thru and keeping the kitchen clean. The place was empty, the kind of silence that makes every flicker of fluorescent light feel like it has weight. Then the headset crackled. A man's voice came through, slow and dragging, ordering nothing but 1 black coffee. The cashier repeated it back, but the man didn't respond. Instead, he just whispered something low, something the worker couldn't quite make out. When the car pulled forward, there was only a battered old sedan, windows so fogged the worker couldn't see inside. The cashier opened the window, holding out the coffee. That's when he noticed the man's hands. They weren't just dirty. They were dark with something that looked almost dried on, something crusted thick around the fingernails. The worker tried not to react, but the man finally leaned closer. His face was pale, gaunt, and his eyes were wide, unblinking. He didn't reach for the coffee at all. Instead, he whispered, "You shouldn't be here." The cashier froze. Then the man took a long, shuddering breath and added, "Neither should I." Before anyone could say anything, the sedan rolled forward without taking the drink, pulling out of the lot and disappearing into the empty street. The cashier was shaken, but he tried to brush it off. Just a creepy customer, nothing more. But an hour later, the same sedan rolled past the front windows. Slowly. The man was still inside, staring directly at the building. No headlights on, just drifting by. He didn't stop. He didn't come back through the drive-thru. He just kept circling the property every half hour like clockwork. By 4 a.m., the employees were too scared to even look outside. Every time the car passed, the man's face was pressed to the glass, watching them. They called the police, but by the time the cruiser showed up, the sedan was gone. The officers said they'd keep an eye out, but there wasn't much else to do. When the morning manager came in, she found both employees pale and trembling, swearing they'd seen the car stop in the lot one last time before sunrise. They claimed the man had gotten out, just standing in the parking lot, staring up at the golden arches with his head tilted at an unnatural angle. They refused to step outside, too terrified to even lock up the trash. No one believed them until the surveillance footage was reviewed. The cameras caught the sedan circling the building over and over. But when the employees insisted they'd seen the man get out of the car, the tape showed something else. At 5:14 a.m., the sedan pulled into the lot, headlights still off. It sat there for 7 minutes, but no one ever opened the door. The car just idled, driver's seat completely empty, until the engine sputtered off and the lights inside the McDonald's flickered. By the time they came back on, the car was gone. To this day, the workers swear they weren't imagining it. They both quit within a week, and locals still talk about the McDonald's ghost car. The cameras were replaced, the overnight shift got scrapped, and no one ever saw that sedan again. But every once in a while, people driving late at night down that stretch of road claim they've seen a pale man standing alone in the parking lot of the 24-hour McDonald's, just waiting for someone to hand him his coffee.
Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 3.
There's a story that has been whispered among fast food workers for years, and the people who tell it swear it really happened at a McDonald's just outside of Cincinnati. The overnight shift is usually quiet, mostly truckers, insomniacs, and drunk college kids staggering in for fries at 3 a.m. One night in 2006, a young manager named Claire was closing up with 2 other employees when something came through the front door that none of them would ever forget. The man didn't come in to order. He just stood there, still as a mannequin, watching them from the entrance. His clothes were filthy, his face pale, and his eyes wide and unblinking, locked on the crew as they cleaned the counters. Claire called out, asking if he needed help, but he didn't respond. After nearly a minute of silence, he walked past the registers, straight into the dining area, and sat at a booth facing the play place. That's when things got worse. The cameras in the back started glitching, showing static every time they tried to check them. One of the employees swore he saw the man reflected in the monitor before he'd even walked in the building, like he had. When Claire approached the table, the man Van finally spoke, but in a strange, high-pitched whisper that didn't match his size. He kept asking the same question. "Do you have children here?" Unnerved, she told him no, and that the store was closing soon. The man just smiled, a wide, unnatural grin, then stood up and walked toward the play place without permission. Claire rushed to stop him, but when she followed him into the brightly colored tunnel maze, he was gone. The tunnels were empty. The doors were locked. There was no way he could have slipped past her without being seen. The 3 employees searched the restaurant from top to bottom, even the bathrooms, but he had vanished completely. Then, just as they were about to call the police, one of them screamed. On the fog glass of the play place window, written from the inside with a finger, were the words, "I like when they hide." No alarms had gone off. No doors had opened. The man was gone. Police arrived and searched the entire property, but found nothing. There was no sign of forced entry, no footprints, no explanation. The only thing that unsettled them further was the security footage. On the tape, the man did walk through the front doors, but when he moved into the dining area, his reflection never appeared in the glass. And when he headed toward the play place, the cameras cut out for exactly 2 minutes. When the feed came back, the tunnels were empty, just as the employees had seen. Corporate told Claire and her crew not to talk about it, but they all quit within a week. To this day, workers on the overnight shift at that McDonald's claim strange things still happen in the play place after midnight. Chairs will be moved, kids' laughter can be heard when the restaurant is empty, and sometimes, just for a second, the fogged glass looks like there are words written on it again. Some say the man still comes back, sitting in that booth and watching, waiting for the answer he wants to hear.
Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 4.
There's a story that still circulates among night shift workers at McDonald's, one that sounds too unsettling to be forgotten. It happened in the early 2000s at a 24-hour location off a quiet highway in the Midwest. The store manager, Laura, was used to the strange crowd that showed up after midnight. Drunks, loners, truck drivers. But one man stood out. He came in around 2:30 a.m., tall, pale, and completely silent. He ordered nothing, just stood at the counter staring at the glowing menu board while the cashier nervously asked if he wanted food. After several minutes, he muttered something no one could catch, then slowly walked out. Everyone laughed it off at first, but when Laura checked the cameras the next day, her blood went cold. The man hadn't entered through the front doors. On the tape, he simply appeared, frame by frame, standing in the middle of the lobby. No entry, no movement, just there. She called corporate to report it, but they brushed it off as a camera glitch. Still, she couldn't shake the unease. 2 weeks later, the same man returned. This time, he slid into a booth in the corner, sitting stiffly with his hands folded on the table. A new employee, unaware of the story, tried to take his order. When she asked what he wanted, he looked her in the eye and whispered, "You close at 3. The girl was confused. This McDonald's was open 24 hours. When she laughed nervously and said so, he smiled for the first time, showing teeth that looked gray and worn down, almost like stone. Then he vanished. The booth was empty before anyone realized he'd gone. By then, the night crew was terrified. A few quit, others refused to work the graveyard shift. But Laura stayed. One night, she decided to confront whatever was happening. At 2:30 a.m., she stood at the counter waiting. Sure enough, the man appeared again. This time, though, the power cut out. Fryers went silent, the soda machine stopped buzzing, and the restaurant was plunged into total darkness except for the faint emergency lights. From the blackness, she heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming closer to the counter. When the lights flickered back, she was alone. She tried to act like it hadn't shaken her, but when she checked the security footage, the tape showed something different. The man hadn't been alone. Behind him, crowding the booths in the hallway, were dozens of pale figures, all staring toward the camera. Some had their mouths hanging open, others pressed their hands against the glass, faces smeared against the windows from the inside. None of them had ever been in the restaurant. That McDonald's still operates today, but no one will admit to working the overnight shift. The locals say if you drive past between 2:30 and 3 in the morning, the restaurant looks full of customers even though the parking lot is empty. And if you look too long, one of them might notice you and decide you belong inside.
Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 5.
There's something about late-night fast food runs that feels safe, familiar, and harmless, but one story about a McDonald's in Maine shattered that illusion for everyone who worked there. It was in 2019, and the restaurant was open 24 hours. Night shifts were usually slow, drunk customers at the drive-thru, teenagers loitering inside, but nothing out of the ordinary. That changed one night when the employees noticed something strange. Every time they took trash out to the dumpster, they swore they saw someone crouching behind it. At first, they thought it was just a homeless person hanging around for scraps, but when the shift manager went out to check, the space was completely empty. Not long after, customers began to complain that the men's bathroom smelled disgusting, like rotting meat. They assumed someone had thrown food in the trash or clogged the toilet, but when the janitor went in, he froze. Written on the mirror in what looked like blood were the words, "I'm still hungry." The stalls were empty. No one had gone in, and security footage didn't show anyone entering the bathroom for over an hour before the writing appeared. The police were called, but the substance was never identified. It wasn't paint, it wasn't ketchup, and it wasn't blood that any lab could recognize. Weeks later, things escalated. Employees would hear someone whispering their names while they cleaned after closing, even though only 2 or 3 workers were inside. Drive-through headsets would pick up static followed by a deep, guttural voice repeating, order ready," even though there was no one at the speaker box. The final straw came when a teenage employee was assigned to mop the play area. He ran out screaming, saying he saw a man crawling through the tunnels of the play place, too big to even fit. When the manager checked, the tunnels were empty, but greasy handprints were smeared along the inside, higher up than any child could reach. That McDonald's shut down not long after. The official reason given was plumbing and electrical issues, but former employees still talk about it in hushed tones. Some swear that whatever haunted the place didn't leave when the doors closed. Truckers on the highway near that exit have reported seeing a tall, thin figure standing by the abandoned McDonald's sign late at night, watching the cars pass. They say its head jerks unnaturally, like it's listening for an order that never comes. And if you think it's just another urban legend, consider this. One of the cops who responded to the bathroom incident quit the force entirely. His reason, told only to a friend, was chilling. He said when he looked into the mirror that night, for a split second, his reflection wasn't his own. It was a gaunt face with a grin too wide, whispering his name.
Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 6.
There's a story that still makes the rounds among late-night McDonald's employees, the kind of tale that gets whispered when the store lights flicker and the streets outside are empty. It happened in 2014 at a 24-hour location in Ohio when a young night shift worker named Daniel was just 3 weeks into the job. The lobby was quiet, the drive-thru nearly dead. Around 3:15 a.m., a man walked in wearing a hood, pulled low, and sunglasses despite the hour. He didn't order food, he just stood by the soda machine, staring at the workers behind the counter. Daniel recalled how the man seemed to be grinning, but his mouth never moved. At first, they thought he was just another drugged-out customer, common enough at that time of night. But then he began to walk slowly in circles around the dining area, dragging his fingers along the plastic seats, tapping on the glass, watching the staff's every move. When Daniel approached and asked if he needed help, the man leaned in close enough for Daniel to smell his breath stale and sour and whispered, "I already ate." Then he walked straight into the restroom and locked the door. Minutes passed, then 20, then an hour. Customers came and went, but the man never returned. When Daniel knocked, there was no response. His manager grabbed the key and opened the door. What they found inside made them all quit within the week. The restroom was empty, not a trace of the man. But on the mirror, written in what looked like greasy fingerprints, were the words, "You serve the dead too." Underneath the sink, tucked into the shadows, they found a McDonald's employee hat, soaked with something dark and fresh. The police were called, but their search turned up nothing. No footprints, no security footage of the man ever leaving. What chilled Daniel most was the footage they did recover. When they rewound the cameras to the moment the hooded figure entered, there was no one on the tape. The doors slid open, the staff all looked toward the entrance, but the space where the man should have been was completely empty. The store replaced the mirror, scrubbed the walls, tried to move on. But weeks later, another worker doing a restroom check claimed she saw a hooded man standing in the corner stall, his reflection grinning back at her through the mirror, even though the stall was empty. She quit that same night. That location is still open today, but every few months, someone reports seeing greasy fingerprints appear across the bathroom mirror without anyone touching it. And to this day, the overnight crew insists that when the dining area goes still and the hum of the fryers is the only sound, they can feel eyes on them, watching from a corner where no one stands.
Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 7.
There's a story that's been whispered among late-night fast food workers, one that still unsettles the employees who worked the overnight shift at a McDonald's in Ohio back in the early 2000s. The location sat off a Quietship highway, open 24 hours but rarely busy past 1 a.m. Most of the time, it was just a skeleton crew. 2 cooks in the back, 1 cashier, and a manager who mostly hid in the office. One night, around 2:30 a.m., a man walked in. He was tall, thin, wearing a heavy coat despite the warm weather. The cashier, a girl named Leah, swore she never saw him pull up in a car. He just seemed to appear from the empty parking lot, stepping in as though he'd been waiting outside in the dark. His behavior was off immediately. He didn't approach the counter right away, just stood near the door, staring at the menu board like he couldn't read it. His eyes kept shifting back and forth, not quite meeting hers. When he finally walked up, he asked for a coffee. Nothing strange about that. But when Leah asked what size, he tilted his head and smiled. "Doesn't matter," he said. His voice was flat, monotone, like he was repeating words he'd memorized. She handed him the cup, took his money, and he walked over to sit in the corner booth facing the counter. He didn't drink the coffee. He didn't touch it at all. He just sat there staring, hour after hour. By 4 a.m., the crew started to get uncomfortable. Customers usually came and went quickly at that hour. Truckers, night shift workers, the occasional drunk college kid. But this man hadn't moved. He wasn't on his phone. He didn't fidget. He didn't blink much. Just sat with that cup of untouched coffee, eyes locked on whoever happened to walk near him. The manager decided to ask him to leave, but when she approached the booth, he wasn't there. The coffee cup was still sitting on the table, full, but the man was gone. Nobody had seen him get up, no bell rang from the door, and the parking lot outside was completely empty. The crew brushed it off, telling themselves maybe he slipped out quietly. But the next night, he came back. Same time, same heavy coat, same order, sat in the same booth. This time, he stayed until sunrise. The employees avoided looking at him, unnerved by his unchanging posture and that strange smile that never reached his eyes. On the 3rd night, Leah swore she saw something that made her quit the job for good. She had gone into the lobby to wipe down tables, and as she passed his booth, she glanced at his reflection in the window. Only, it wasn't his reflection. In the glass, the booth was empty. No man, no coffee, just the dark parking lot outside. She froze, her heart racing, and when she turned back toward him, he was staring directly at her, smile wider than before. She screamed, dropped her rag, and bolted for the back kitchen. When the manager came out, the booth was empty again, cup untouched, and no trace of the man in the parking lot or on the security cameras. The cameras, in fact, showed something else that rattled everyone. They watched the footage of him entering that night, but on the tape, the door never opened. Leah was at the counter, clearly reacting, handing a cup of coffee to no one. The employees swore they saw him with their own eyes, but on video, there was only an empty booth with a coffee sitting in front of it. That McDonald's still operates, but overnight shifts are always understaffed because employees keep quitting. They say sometimes, between 2 and 3 a.m., the lobby lights flicker, and the security feed will show that corner booth with a single coffee cup waiting there, untouched, as if he's already come back and is just waiting to be noticed again.
Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 8.
There's a story that gets whispered among night shift workers at McDonald's, the kind of thing that never makes it into the news because nobody wants to admit it really happened. Back in 2013, there was a McDonald's off a highway in Indiana, open 24 hours, the kind of place truckers and insomniacs stumbled into at 3 in the morning. The overnight manager, a woman named Carol, had worked there for over a decade. She said the strangest part of the job wasn't the drunks, the fights, or the kids messing around. It was the people who came in alone and stayed long after their food was cold. One night, around 2:30 a.m., the store was empty, except for a single man sitting in the corner booth. He hadn't ordered much, just a black coffee, but he stayed hunched over the table with his hood up, staring at the wall. The 2 employees working that shift noticed he never actually touched the coffee. Hours passed, and Carol told one of the crew to politely ask him to leave. When the employee walked over, The man slowly turned his head. His skin was so pale it looked gray under the fluorescent lights, and his eyes didn't seem to focus properly. He didn't respond when the employee asked if he was okay, just sat there breathing shallowly. Finally, Carol herself walked over and said, "Sir, we're going to need you to go." That's when he leaned forward and whispered something so softly she couldn't understand a word. His lips moved, but the sound was like static. Then he stood up, walked to the bathroom, and never came out. They thought he was just hiding, maybe messing with them, but after 15 minutes, Carol knocked on the bathroom door. No answer. She opened it with the staff key, and it was empty. No window, no second door, nothing. The security footage was checked later, but here's the part that chilled everyone. The man never appeared on camera at all. You could see Carol and her crew talking to an empty booth, see them looking at something that wasn't there, even see the bathroom door swing open, but not once did the man himself appear. That McDonald's had trouble keeping staff after that night. People reported strange things, the freezer door locking from the inside, soft whispering on the headsets when nobody else was on the line, shadows moving across the dining area even after closing. Carol swore up and down that what she saw was real, that she wasn't just tired or imagining things. The building was eventually remodeled, but those who worked there after said the corner booth where he sat was always colder than the rest of the restaurant, no matter how high the heat was turned up. To this day, truckers passing through swear they've seen a man in a dark hoodie sitting alone in the window at 3 a.m., staring out at the highway. But when they pull in for a coffee, the booth is always empty.